mature. So the police officer from the Sterling Brown incident joked about unleashing a similar beating on J.R. Smith after his gaffe in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Stephen A., your reaction to the latest?
Well, I mean, it's inappropriate. We understand it, and it's idiotic on the part of the police officer because it just brings awareness to the heightened level of insensitivity that police officers are consistently accused of having. And so when you look at it from that perspective, there is no doubt that it was inappropriate, that it was something that the officer should not have done, making a joke on social media about J.R. Smith. In reference to Brown's arrest, talking about how you'd like to tase him or what have you. Where would you get that from? Why would you say something like that? And why would you think for 1 second that what happened to Sterling Brown was a joke? These are the kind of things that African Americans throughout this nation have been lamenting about for quite some time. It has been in the public eye and a storyline and a narrative that has been talked about ad nauseum. We recognize that, and if you would think, and if you were to think that anybody would have a heightened level of sensitivity, it would be law enforcement officials out there who care about their image, who care about how the boys in blue are being depicted nationwide. And anytime an officer seems to be oblivious to that or apathetic to or indifferent to that, it's problematic, because if they're indifferent to that, then obviously one would surmise that they're going to be indifferent to how they treat folks from the minority communities, which is why we have the kind of problems that we have and the kind of problems that we've lamented about in this nation.
The tweet about J.R. Smith betrays an arrogance that is really disturbing on the part of that police officer. And if you look at the video, by the way, I've watched the video. Look, he was parked in 2 handicapped spots, and he was in and out. It was late at night. He was in and out of the store. But the officer, when he noticed that, stayed right by the car to catch him when he got out of the store and tell him, hey, you parked in two spots you shouldn't have been in. Now, the officer, I think, didn't feel, it seemed to me on the video, he didn't feel like he was getting the proper, if not respect, maybe even fear. And that seemed to bother him. And however you slice it, look, he shouldn't have been in those parking spots. Why does something like that, when clearly there was no aggression on the part of the party who the police officer approached, why was there just was an absence of like fear and deference? Why does that escalate to being tased? Why does that escalate? That is, however you want to slice it, that's a bad cop. And by bad cop, I mean bad at his job. There are lots of good cops who are good at their jobs, but there are plenty who are also, like any job, bad at their jobs. Someone who does not do their job well. Because if you're a police officer, given the behavior of the subject, of the person you are talking to, the fact that that escalates to multiple police officers holding him down and him being tased, it's bad police work, however you slice it. So I understand there's a lot of outrage about this because of the way police interact with communities of color, particularly brutality toward African Americans, particularly in this political climate that seems to enable them or even encourage them at times to behave this way, to look at other groups as something less than. But when you think about it, Stephen A., if there was video of that cop being tased, people would be totally outraged, and for good reason. It would show a lack of respect for the law, and a human being tased is an outrageous thing to see anyway. But you can flip that argument around and saying, when you are so empowered, when you're given the legal right to use an electrical current on another human being, in fact, that, as you would say, Stephen A., elevates the level of responsibility to use that power judiciously and properly. And this police officer escalated a situation that really didn't need to be escalated. He used force that is really outrageous given the circumstances, and then he joked about it on social media, showing that he has a complete lack of understanding about the severity and the kind of demoralizing, dehumanizing kind of aspect of his behavior. And it points out why Colin Kaepernick didn't feel right about standing for the anthem in the first place, and why Nate Boyer said he wants to live in a country where everyone feels good about standing for the anthem. Behavior like this is the root of the issue.
Well, yeah. I mean, listen, Max. We don't disagree here. We're coming from different perspectives, obviously. Just from an ethnic perspective, in terms of what the kind of things that we're exposed to. But you're absolutely right with what you're saying. I know I'm not wrong with what I'm saying. It's just unfortunate, and I think that it's not really a debatable issue. It's an issue that involves sadness, and it involves sadness because people don't give us enough credit. I'm talking about us, meaning the vast majority of American citizens out here who love the nation that we live in, love this country and what it's supposed to be all about, and go about our business of trying to be the best that we can be every day. And sometimes, Max, we just sit up here and the feeling that resonates most is sadness. And the reason why it's sad is because there's somehow, some way where you try to move beyond the kind of things that have ailed our society and kept us down and kept us from elevating ourselves as a people and as a nation. You think you move beyond these things, and then all of a sudden you see little nuggets of material and information and what have you that just remind you that as far as we may have come, we have so far to go. And then we also look at the times that we're living in, and it's not about people feeling things that they've never felt, Max. It's about people feeling things that they suppressed because they knew that they had to, and now they feel a freedom to come out and express themselves and reveal openly and freely what they're doing. And that's what we're talking about here, man. That's what we're talking about.